Good morning, everyone. Oh, you're more awake than I am. That's great. Contrary to what the program says, I am not Josh Lockyer. Josh isn't feeling well this morning, and so I'm stepping in to kind of moderate the program. I am on the program. My name is John Andelson. I'm on the advisory board or board of directors of the association, and we're going to slightly revise the order of presentation from what's in the program, which is about the 50-year history of our association. So Kathy Fernandez will start by talking about the sites that the CSA has visited over the years. Then Cheryl Coulthard will talk about book reviews that have been done. Heather Van Wormer will talk about the journal. And then I will kind of follow up talking about membership. Heather will take a little bit of the thunder out of that one, as you'll see, but we'll deal with that in time. So let's begin with Kathy's presentation first.
Okay, thank you. Well, with apologies to Dr. Seuss for the copyright infringement, or is this fair use? I'm not quite sure. But what is the song? I've been everywhere. I've been everywhere. Well, I haven't been everywhere, but I have been to 47 of the CSA conferences that have been held at historic sites across the nation. Since we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, I've been asked by Program Chair Greg Brown to give an overview of the various historic sites where conferences have been held. First, the numbers. New Harmony is the grand prize winner. Not only was our first conference held here in 1974, but we have been here a total of 6 times, counting this year. This is not surprising, since Don Pitzer, founder of the organization, was based nearby at the University of Southern Indiana, then called Indiana State University at Evansville. But New Harmony's beauty, facilities, and double your pleasure, communal history as the home of the Harmonists and the Owenites are good reasons as well. In addition to the annual conferences, the CSA board has met here several times more for its spring meeting. So I think I've probably been here a total of about 12 times altogether for CSA. The saying at the bottom was scrolled on a sign at the New Harmony Conference in 2010, and I don't know if you can read it. Utopia, if defined as best place, rather than no place, is a CSA conference in New Harmony. We've met at a number of sites 3 different times: Hancock Shaker Village, Zoar, Aurora, Old Economy and / Harmony, Pennsylvania, Oneida, and Amana. We will be meeting in Amana at 2025 and Oneida in 2026. Additionally, like New Harmony, the board has met multiple times at Amana in the spring, and Amana is our official headquarters, although we are incorporated in Indiana. We've met twice at several places: South Union Shaker Village, Canterbury Shaker Village, Bishop Hill, and Ephrata, where we're meeting next year, 2024, Estero, Florida, and Shaker Village at Pleasant Hill, and if you count the organizational meeting in 1973, we've been there 3 times. We've always had a hard time finding places west of the Rockies. but we have been once to visit the Theosophist site at Point Loma, California, the anarchist communities near Tacoma, Washington, and a memorable visit to the Synanon site at Marconi, California. We visited 2 Icarian sites, Nauvoo and Omaha, Nebraska, the latter where we had sessions for the only time exclusively at a hotel, not at a site. We visited Hutterite communities at Yankton, South Dakota, and music was the topic when we visited the Moravian town of Winston-Salem, and decorative art was the theme at Winterthur. And last but not least, we've discussed the Mormons at Nauvoo, Kirtland, St. George, and Salt Lake City. For a few years, the board auditioned sites at its spring meeting to see the facilities and to determine if that location could accommodate us. Sites visited include Sunrise Ranch in Loveland, Colorado, Conania Farm in Georgia, where Chuck and Pauline LeWarn worshiped with Jimmy Carter, as you can see in the picture there. Dunmire Hollow near Nashville, Tennessee, Jesus People USA in Chicago, a convent near Kansas City, Missouri, and in an aborted move to make transportation easier for board members, a motel near O'Hare Airport in Chicago. None of these, sadly, made the list. There are historic and other communal places we would love to go, but there are just not the facilities needed for hosting a conference. Nearby airports, lodging, food services, spaces for 80 to 100 people to meet. For instance, I would love to meet in Rugby, Tennessee, or at a Hutterite colony. Our meeting in Yankton in 1989 was at a hotel with a one-day visit to 2 nearby communities, or some of the 1960s communities out west, etc., etc. Imperative also is a CSA member either at the site itself, nearby, or with a healthy relationship with the site who is able to coordinate the arrangements. If you know of any great places that meet those criteria and we haven't yet been there, please let me or a board member know. In preparing this talk, I went through my recollections of 47 conferences and my collection of newsletters and found a few memories to share. Our annual auctions, which started in the early 1990s, first with Harvey Baker, I think he's there, he is, and lately Christian Goodwillie, and this year they tag teamed, as you saw last night, the boat trip down, or was it up, the Kentucky River at Pleasant Hill, where we almost froze. The pre-conference tour to the Bruderhof in Pennsylvania that turned into a tour of Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water instead, which was quick thinking by Walter Brum. Passing the CSA bylaws in Zoar in 1979 while sitting for what seemed like hours on those hard benches. The various sessions on communal music at Old Salem and Ephrata that became the CSA's first and only recordings, which are now collector's items. Keeping Jeff Bach's winning of Distinguished Scholar a secret and having him leave the conference early before the awards were presented. Hearing a panel of Amana descendants about their reactions to the 1933 dissolution. That was a wonderful, wonderful thing. Did you know that CSA had a short-lived Pacific Coast chapter? Changing the name from the National Historic Communal Societies Association to the Communal Studies Association in 1990. In the early years of the internet, the CSA had a bulletin board. Its first website was hosted by Swarthmore College. Dancing in the Streets at Aurora in 1977. I wasn't there, though. I was dancing at my own wedding. That was one of the conferences I've missed. Hearing the elaborate Las Vegas Bellagio Hotel fountain place simple gifts after this St. George conference. I was not there either. My husband was having major surgery, but thanks to Tim Miller for this memory. Playing the slots at Vernon Downs Casino near Oneida, looking at you, Mark Rohr. The baseball game at Mary City of David. The progress from analog to digital presentation with Tim Miller still looking for an overhead projector. Although I think he's now migrated to jump drives, so I'm singing shaker songs at many meetings, and last but not least, folk dancing with Larry Foster. It's been fun looking back. Where we are as an organization has much to do with where we have met. We have met where it happened, and not in some soulless hotel room. Seeing and touring these historic sites gives an added dimension to our conferences that other organizations just don't have. So yes, we sometimes have to sit on hard benches or make do in rooms that aren't perfect for acoustics or lighting or heat or have the necessary built-in equipment. But there's nothing like being there on site. Thanks, Don Pitzer, for having the idea of meeting at sites for this organization. We're much better for it. Thank you. Talk about an accent.
T-shirts present a problem for mics. Let's try that. Okay, how do I get rid of this? Here we go. Oops. Okay, that's not working. Just a second.
It's worked. You had it.
Oh, I had it? Okay. Bear with me. I haven't done a PowerPoint in years since I stopped teaching.
Slideshow.
I'm looking for it. There it is. Okay.
And from the beginning.
Yep.
Now look at your screen.
There we go. Okay. So Zach was saying yesterday that he was trying a new thing, reading a paper. This is something new for me, analyzing data, because I don't do quantitative work usually. So I'm the book review editor. My name's Cheryl Colfart. And over the last 50 years, in 49 issues, we've reviewed 306 books in communal societies, the Journal of the Communal Studies Association. So this presentation is going to walk us through those numbers and hopefully open a discussion about where we want the journal to head in the future. And acknowledging we may be happy with where we are, but if not, it's something we should talk about. I tried to come up with some questions. Does the sound okay? It sounds echoey to me. It's okay? Okay, good. I tried to come up with some questions about the book review section of the journal that members might want to ask. And I've analyzed the reviews in terms of a number of different factors and questions to try and draw some data to give us a picture of communal societies. So I apologize ahead of time. Some of the labels on the graphs may be really small, but I'll read them out. Oops. So let's start by looking at books reviewed. Come on, advance.
Hit your space.
Down there.
Oh, okay. Let's try that. There we go. Okay. So 49 issues, 306 books, 274 individual book authors, and 182 individual reviewers. Lots of people involved, which is great. Most of the books were about communal group, past or present, not surprising. Yeah, you can't read the numbers or the labels at the bottom. But not surprisingly, the community most represented in the reviews has been the Shakers. No other group even comes close. There were 42 books about Shakers. Then the next closest was the Amish and Hutterites at 13. And the remaining groups on the chart are American intentional communities, so more generally about the phenomenon of communalism, with 12. Latter-day Saints at 11. 7 on Oneida, and then Amana, Kibbutzim, and New Harmony with 4 each. There were actually 163 groups represented in the book reviews, so lots of different communities. But these are the most frequent, and most of the remaining groups showed up once or twice. So 2 comments about groups represent. This reflects the books published in the field. As book review editor, I'm limited to what people are writing and publishing. I can't review books that don't exist. The overrepresentation of the Shakers just illustrates the interest in the field and the large number of books published on this topic. Areas where I don't see a lot of titles available for review include books that focus on issues relating to diversity and community. So women in community, people of color, queer folks, that sort of thing. So if you're aware of books that are coming out in these areas, if you read a book that you think is really great, please let me know so we can include them. I'm open to any books that are relevant to communal studies, past or present, academic or practical books. So while on the one hand it feels like there's fewer books published in communal studies each year, I think looking at the titles of the books published in the early years of the journal, that reviewed in the early years, there was less concern about how tightly the books reviewed stuck with the theme of communalism. That is, there were a lot more books on topics that were kind of tangential to communal studies, like religion. We're introducing a feature in the journal called Check This Out, and that will include shorter blurbs about media that might be of interest to readers, but because of their length, their subject, or format, they don't fit neatly into the book review section. So things like podcasts, documentaries, utopian novels, books by communalists that maybe aren't necessarily about their communal experience. So again, if you see anything out there that you think people might be interested in, and particularly if you see somebody say, hey, I'd really like to write a review about this, please let me know. So, book subject locations. So that's where the group that's the subject of the book is located. I consider this factor because I was interested in how American-centric the reviews are and the journal is. And again, no big surprises. The bulk of the books reviewed focus on the US. The medium blue portion of the pie represents the United States. Red is global. And then there were a number of books that were on specific states. So green is New York, purple's California, orange is Indiana, blue is Pennsylvania, and then the kind of the turquoise blue in there is Australia and New Zealand. So in total, there were over 60 locations specified for the book content. And again, the locations correspond both to reader interest in books published. And unfortunately, I'm limited again by how far I can broaden this by what I'm made aware of and what's being published. It makes sense to me that we focus largely on books about American communities, given their membership is largely American. But if we want to broaden our outreach to include members from more countries, it might help if they could see their interests represented in the journal. So I've been working with reviewers in Britain and Australia and New Zealand towards this end. So further to broadening outreach, because it's something we've been talking about with membership, I consider the type of books that we review. So whether they're academic, practical, that is how to start and run a community, fiction, journalism, popular history, those types of kind of genres. So the purposes of this graph, I included memoirs under practice. So far and away, the bulk of the books reviewed, seen here in blue, are academic. No shocker there. This is a reflection largely of what's published each year. Academics have pressure to publish, so they publish more. People living in community are too busy living in community, so they don't publish as much. There are 241 books, academics books, reviewed. The next largest group of books is about the practice of communalism. There were 45 of those. That's the red. So the bulk of those were memoirs of people who live or have lived in a communal setting, and then the rest were more kind of how-to type books about communalism. And I've been making an effort to seek these out, but there aren't that many published. So again, if you hear about it, please let me know. The other categories are green is fiction, purple is journalism, and that includes photojournalism, and then the lighter blue is popular history. Part of my thinking about this has been if we're concerned the conference doesn't attract many practitioners of communalism, one factor is they may feel they're not represented enough. I'm not saying they don't have interest in academic articles, but just increasing the representation of practical books might increase the interest of non-academics in the journal. The remainder of the reviews were fiction about intentional communities, journalism, photojournalism, popular history, so not peer-reviewed books. There were 8, 6, and 3 of these respectively. And in the future, many of these types of books will show up and check this out, rather than the book reviews. The final factor about books I considered for this presentation was, there we go, time period. And not looking at specific date, but more generally were the books reviewed looking at historical communities or modern communities. And the distribution echoes the academic practical split on the previous slide. Blue shows historical communities, red is modern, green is kind of a mix. So communities like the Hutterites that are both historical and are still active. And the modern communities includes the practical guides, the memoirs, sociological and anthropological studies, that sort of thing. So now I want to turn from the content of the books to the people writing and reviewing them. What I did not see as much as I expected was a lot of change over time in terms of the gender of the book reviewers or the authors. It's been largely stable. And I acknowledge that I'm presenting this information as more binary than it may actually be, but I use the data available. So this next chart, green is male authors, blue is female, and red is female and male, meaning there's more than one author. 197 of the books reviewed were written by men, 90 by women, and 16 by male and female collaborators. And as with book subjects, the gender distribution represents the distribution of books published. So ultimately, if we're concerned about this gender split, we would need for more women to be published in the field of communal studies. I was curious about who the most reviewed authors were in the journal. And obviously, they're going to be the most prolific authors in the field. Any guesses as to who number one is? Who's the most prolific author you can think of? Tim Miller, yeah. Tim Miller has had 6 books reviewed, and the other 4 listed here each have 3. So Rod Jansen, Robert Fogarty, Ian Donachie, and George Hewitt, and Yakov Oved. It was just a matter of curiosity. So the remainder of the 274 authors had 1 or 2 books reviewed, although some wrote with different collaborators each time, which throws the numbers off a little bit. Book reviewers were similarly split by gender. And I was really curious about how that balance would work out. So blue, it represents 200 male reviewers, and red, 103 female reviewers. You'll notice this doesn't add up to the 182 reviewers on the first slide, and that's because in this chart, reviewers are included for each review rather than once as an individual. So for example, Susan Love Brown's 7 reviews shows up in this chart as 7 female reviewers. This split is more easily balanced if we thought that was necessary or desirable. And in general, I assign reviews to people who have expressed interest or are knowledgeable on the book's subject matter. So again, I will make an appeal. If you're interested in reviewing books, please let me know. It's a great way to get new books and keep up with new works in the field. So finally, I just took a look at book reviewers by name. And part of what I want to highlight here is that the work done to produce the journal is not evenly distributed. Some people put in much more effort than others. And I don't say that to shame anyone, but to celebrate the individuals who contribute regularly to communal societies and to encourage those of you who want to get more involved to participate. Once again, Tim Miller is our most prolific contributor, having written 21 reviews. And I acknowledge, I lean on Tim a lot because there's an awful lot of communities that nobody else has heard of. So I will go to him and ask him, do you know anybody else that knows anything about this community? And often the answer is no. So he's been very, very helpful. Similar, Bill Metcalf does a lot of reviews on Australia and New Zealand because we don't have a lot of people there. And he's been very helpful. So the remainder of the top 10 you can see here are Susan Love Brown, Charles LeWarn, Deborah Altus, Rod Jansen, Lucy Jane Camo, Carol Medlicott, Ruth Lambach, and John Andelson. Beyond this top 10, 172 individual reviewers have contributed to the journal over the years, and I thank you all for your work. I've created a spreadsheet with all the data for the first 50 years of the journal, and I plan to update this with each new issue and pass it on to whoever takes over from me as book editor. And this will keep the data available for the editorial board or the board of the Communal Studies Association when any questions or discussions about the book reviews in the journal arise. To finish up, I'd again like to express my appreciation for everyone who's contributed to communal societies, past and present. This is truly a journal for the members, by the members. So I hope we can have a discussion about where we want to see the journal head in the future and what the priorities of the members are. Thank you. I will leave the mic up here for you, Heather. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Maybe we'll just do this.
Sorry.
Okay. I'll attempt to. Maybe I wore the wrong shirt. Is that gonna work? Okay. It feels weird to hear my voice. I don't like it. Okay. So I'm here as the current editor to talk about our journal. And a lot of the themes that you heard from Cheryl are going to be repeated in this as well. First, because I have not had a lot of time since I used PowerPoint. That was Tuesday. I just want to warn you, the next slide is not a quiz. It's a question. I'd like you to just think, I'm going to give you all of these numbers as we go, but I want you to guess in your head what you think these are. How many pages does the journal articles have we done? How many articles? How many authors? How many academic disciplines? And how many communities? And I'll talk through each of these, but I kind of want you to see if your guesses are okay, or close, or really far off. So let's start with the first one. What do you think? Number of pages?
Per journal?
No, total. Any guesses? Close. Not quite far enough. 7,147, which is a lot. If you think, as many of the archivists in this room who think in linear feet, that's a lot. Number of articles, 332. That's just the articles. That doesn't count documents, that doesn't count the book reviews, that's just the articles that are there. And when we look at those, I wanted to look a little bit more at those numbers. Only 37 authors out of those 316 have given us an article more than once. That means we have a lot of people who give us an article and never again. That we get one article from them and not another. There are only 21 articles with multiple authors. This means that while we're studying communal people, we're not writing communally in any way. And maybe that's something that we need to think about in the future, especially as we get into some of these other topics, that maybe some writing together or pulling things together would be a good thing to do. Not surprisingly, 57% are male, and I have the same caveat that Cheryl had. That number could be a little wrong. I'm basing it on the journals where we did have a bio about the author. For some, we did not. And I'm basing it on, I'm assuming Edward is a male, but there are a lot of names that I wasn't sure. And so I didn't add that into male or female. I just had another category that I'm not sure. So that number is probably a little off, but it's probably mirroring what you saw with the publications and the number of books. What do you think about disciplines? We are a very multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary group. And I'm going to start with saying a lot, but then I'm going to give you a little bit more. But I was way too lazy to try to figure out the percentages. Once I started this, I got a little overwhelmed and felt a little bit of paranoia about, wow, I'm doing nothing. So, these are the ones that we have the most. History is by far the most, 18%. Then we have religious studies, anthropology, sociology, and political science. Those are about equal in the number of articles in those, from authors in those disciplines. Then education, geography, economics, and English. Music and psychology are not far behind. We then also have fewer, but architecture, criminal justice, environmental studies, women's studies, believe it or not, accounting, more than one. And I was surprised, so I read them. They're actually pretty good. And then a few that are on textiles in different veins. Out of this, 91%, about 91% are academic authors, which is a huge number. About 4% are either from historic sites or historic preservation, and 3%, if I'm really being generous, are communitarians as authors. And that's something I'd like us to figure out a way to address, but we'll talk about that in a few. Back to our, if you had to guess. Communities? What do you think? I didn't even put a lot on because it was just like, it was a waste of time. So, the ones that are in many articles, with Shakers by far outnumbering all of them, Amana, Bruderhoff, Economy, none of these are going to surprise you, but these are some of the ones that are huge. Ones that are more general topics or comparisons, or about specific individuals or specific movements, that's about 25% of the total articles that we have. So it's not just articles about, here's a community I know about. We're doing a lot of other things. And those 25% have been from the beginning. We had those kind of articles from volume 1 and 2, and we continue to have them. So that's not some new place we've gotten to, that's a focus we've always had. Some that we only had a few articles is this list, several of which my putting them in my spreadsheet was the first time I had known of them, and I think there's quite a few of those. We have several that are either just single articles or maybe only mentioned, and that's this list. And that's a much bigger list. And some of those are not communities that are not well known. We just don't have very many articles on them. So I don't want you to think that these are always the little tiny communities that nobody knows about. Some of them are, but not all of them. Once I counted these up, realizing that deciding how to count it, if a group is mentioned in an article, do I answer to that? If it's just one paragraph because they're comparing to something, does it get mentioned? I didn't do that. But it's at least 54 different communities, which is a large amount. And remember, the journal isn't at 50 years yet. The CSA is, but the journal is not yet. So then I started to think about the people who've done this work. Our first editor was T. Wayne Baisley, and he had 2 associate editors, Ann Snow, and then Brian Welch for one part, and Donald Wisenhunt for the other, Wisenhunt. He did 11 articles, and this is really what established our journal. This is the very beginning. Our next was Mario DePillis, and he had 3 associate editors underneath him at all times. There were 4 people who held that position. He did 46 articles, and he really established the base style format that is now familiar to most of us. That's when it got established, was in that one, in those. Michael Barkin was our next, and you'll notice he had 4 associate editors, and now I'm striving to be Michael Barkin because I think that's a really good idea. He had 56 articles, and this is where we really see an expansion of the disciplines that were represented, is during the time that he was editor. We definitely saw a spread there. Then Don Durnbaugh. Notice no associate editors. We'll talk about that with the next editor as well. 24 articles. Here we definitely see, wasn't there, but there's a bit of an expansion with the international relationships. More articles on kibbutzim, more places like that, and an introduction of authors that became longtime CSA members. When we look at that list of authors that Donald Durnbaugh published, those are people that are now people in our group that are leaders or have been leaders or board members or people who are a part of this group. And that's very clear in the people he worked with. Now I'd like to talk about who I'm thinking of as our superhero. I'd like you to look at these numbers and notice there's no associate editors. And yesterday, when I asked him about this, he even admitted he didn't even get a copy editor. He did everything himself for that many years and that many articles. And if anybody has a nomination for what color we should make his editor super cape, please let me know, because I'm thinking it's well deserved. It's a huge amount of work, huge amount. And it was done very well. And this really established us. This is also when, at the very end of that term, where we started to do 2 issues a year. It's also where we started to have an expansion of electronic availability of of the journal. It's where we increased the number of articles that had a comparative focus. They weren't just on one community, they were really about a topic that spread over several and was really doing a good amount of analysis. And this is also where we see much more in terms of reflections that are not academic articles, and we see documents and we see other kinds of things coming into our journal. That was under Rod. And I would like you to look at those numbers again. There might be a quiz later. I'm just saying, it's a huge amount that he gave us in his time and in his effort and in his skill for this association. After Rod, trying to follow up, I can't even imagine that, was Peter Honley. And Peter, again, wisely said associate editors are useful, and got two to help again. 14 articles. This is what established us having color covers, which is something I love. I love that the covers are in color now. I think they're lovely. And the 2 issues a year was really established under Peter, because it was started under Rob, but the logistics of trying to manage that was really under Peter. And largely because the next editor, Carol, worked with Peter before she became editor. Carol is our next. 34 articles, and the first time we had a guest editor in Laura Johnson Cole for the Jonestown one, and that is also something that continued in the next. That's me and Tom as the poor lone associate editor who I pitch things at. We've done 19 articles so far, and again, the guest editorship, which is the cover you're looking at now, was Tom and Susan. Tom and Susan worked on, as you know, a very large volume with 79 images and figures. That took them more than a year. It was a huge amount of work, and we need to remember that that is a big thing, and it's a very substantial, I think, volume. So my questions for you now, for your quiz that you actually have to answer questions for, and I'm cheating a little bit, giving you a preview of the next one that's near the printers and you haven't seen yet, the cover. We've had some changes over time. When we look at the articles and when we look at what we've concentrated on, we've had some things that have stayed the same and some that have changed. One of the things that I see that has changed is in recent years, we have a lot less in the connection to other academic groups. We see fewer and fewer of the Caducean articles. We see fewer and fewer overlaps between utopian studies and us. And I think that's something we might want to consider in this discussion that we're going to have. I would like our connection to humanitarians to be more. I think that the Check This Out new section that Cheryl is starting will help. But I don't think that we can ask communitarians to become academics to be part of our journal. I think we might need to do something with our journal that reaches to them and does something for them that's not just about us. And maybe that co-authorship idea is somewhere we can get that started if we have academics who want to work with a communitarian and figure out what we can put into the journal that's that way. They don't need peer review, right? They don't care if we have peer review. We can give good feedback. We can do those kinds of things, but they're not up for tenure or promotion. So what are the ways that we can have some of that wisdom and some of those things come into the journal? And then perhaps other ideas that you may all have, because you are the audience. This is your journal. This is, as Cheryl noted, this is a journal for the membership, by the membership, and that's very unusual, especially in academic terms. So we should think about what we want to do with it as we move forward. Do you want to do discussion now, or do you want to do the membership first? Do you want me to put that up?
You can leave your PowerPoint.
Do you want me to put the other one up, the membership one?
Yeah.
Okay. trade you. I'm going to trade you away from the thing. Remember, it's not very many slides.
And it's just the down arrow,
It's
right?
just the hours, the arrows.
This one.
Just do this way, doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. Okay. Ooh. Is this the right distance? Right. I'm chair of the membership committee, and so when we were planning this session to review the history of the organization, it was suggested that I do a piece on membership. And I thought, well, great, that'll be fun. We published directories of membership. Here's one from 2000. And I thought it'll be a piece of cake to do this because we've got all of these directories of the membership, and I can do something like what Cheryl did for the book reviews and sort of like what Heather did for the journal. And then I remembered, well, a few years ago I had to move offices at my college, and whenever you move offices, some things get removed. And I had a long run of these, and I thought, well, I can always get those from the CSA itself. I don't need to keep mine. So they went away. And so then it came time to start working on my presentation. And I started looking around. I asked Kathy, well, what have you got? And the long and the short of it is, we could only find membership directories, and I want to thank Heather for putting this together in a slide.
It didn't take long to count.
It didn't take long to count. Out of 50 years, this is all we could come up with. And I wrote to Don, and he sent me a couple of things, and I wrote to Tim Miller, and he sent me a couple of things, but nobody had anywhere close to the full run. And it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that in our studies we're often paying attention to the memberships of the communities that we're looking at, how many members and so on. Karen?
Please hold the mic close to your mouth. You're fading in and out.
Sorry, was that too close? That's good, okay. So it's ironic that we pay attention to memberships in the groups that we're studying, but we have not been very good at keeping track of our own records. I then thought, well, okay, I can look at conference attendees. We're a little better there, but still not a full run. And then membership reports to the board of directors, which just has numbers and not any names, so that wasn't very useful. But even in that category, we don't have very much. So I'm not quite sure where we want to go with that, except to make a resolution that we will keep better track of our lists. And if anybody out there, sorry,
Current membership.
yeah. If anybody out there has records from past years, please let us know and we can add them to the archives. That was another question, exactly where are the archives? I don't want to really get into that, but suffice to say that we don't really have clear archives in one location. Okay, so with that in mind, Heather, do you want to add anything else to that?
Kathy can tell us, he wanted to know the current membership.
Current membership.
You probably, your figures, you have your, I bring, wait a minute.
Yeah, it was, I'm going to have to remember.
118.
I think it was,
118.
And that was regular memberships, not including lifetime.
Then the lifetime is about 20 more, so 138 probably.
yeah, about 138. In this directory, we had listings of both individuals and institutions, and I was just reviewing, and it was 231 in the year 2000.
But that's including institutions.
But that includes institutions, yeah.
And today, institutions is about 28, I think. It's people who subscribe to the journal. And libraries and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and throw it open for general question and answer and discussion with the audience and see what thoughts people have in response to everybody's reports. So, Albert.
You said there, I think, 20-something in university subscriptions or library subscriptions.
Yeah.
About that.
Are there digital subscriptions that libraries are taking?
What kind?
Let me explain.
Just digital.
Oh, digital.
Oh, here, maybe I can turn this
Yeah.
down.
It's on, I think. I think it's on.
Okay, is this working?
Do this one.
We are part of three different databases. EBSCO, Gale, CEngage, which is just one, and ProQuest. And as you probably know in academia, that various libraries can subscribe to one or more of those databases, and they can find our journal in the database. And that's the way you can get a digital copy. Frankly, right now, we do not have a digital subscription for individuals.
Can I add to that? Those databases are usually only 2015 to the present. They don't go all the way back.
Questions. One, in this field, sometimes books will be published, and they may not even come on our radar for 4 or 5 years. Is there kind of a window of limitation in terms of writing a review in terms of when a book is published?
So one of the things I look at is it something that needs to be, that's really timely, but often I don't worry about it too much because there are a lot of books that, particularly if they're coming from a really small press, are less concerned that word gets out immediately because it's something people will continue looking for. So for instance, in your case, Richard Cowper Press, a lot of the community's books come through really small presses, so I don't worry about it that much. If it's someone that's got a book coming out and they need press immediately, then we try and deal with that. But I don't worry too much about it being like this year's book. Does that answer your question, Christian?
Yeah, definitely. And my one other question was, I guess in probably 2011 or 12, we digitized the first 25 volumes at the article level, which are available for free on the website. Can we move forward through, the next 10 volumes and get those on our site as well? I mean,
I can't hear what he's saying, I'm sorry.
He's asking if when we digitize the first set of volumes, can we move forward with doing that and made them free on our website? Can we do that for the next 10 years?
That's certainly a possibility. Would you like to volunteer to digitize them? No, actually, I think most of those are actually digitized already. That's certainly a possibility to go beyond 25, maybe go to 35, yeah.
because I think probably most people in this room are aware of kind of the trend towards open access and academic stuff. And publishing my own journal from Hamilton, nobody wants to lose their physical subscribers, and I think authors still have the satisfaction of having their thing in print. But for discoverability and access, a lot of institutions are dropping those EBSCO, ProQuest, Gale things because they're just getting more and more expensive. I think we could make more of our own product available on our website would be great.
I think another part of that is for shared income communities. The cost of subscriptions can be a problem, so making it more accessible to them is a really good thing too. So that's a good idea, Kristen.
Dan's got the mic.
Hi, thank you so much. This was really informative and gets me thinking a lot about possibilities. I'm going to speak with my hat on as a board member of the International Communal Studies Association. As many of you know, that group is not only international in focus, but much more tilted toward contemporary communitarians. So has the potential to speak to two of the gaps you highlighted in what our journal has covered. ICSA does not have its own journal. One of the consequences of being tilted towards contemporary communitarians is they don't have a lot of money and we don't have a lot of capacity. We have talked about whether we should have a journal, and this presentation really made it clear to me we should be talking between the two organizations to think through whether the most productive way is to filter more international and contemporary stuff to the existing journal, or to potentially duplicate.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I've been talking to Anton Mark at ICSA about this issue and about membership and attracting more current communitarians to the group. So that's something we are working on. But it's a good point.
Also, to get more papers that are given at the international conference routed to the journal.
Okay, am I on? So this is just a suggestion, but I guess I'd like to encourage greater interest in Father Divine's movement, the Universal Peace Brotherhood. I've noticed, looking through many of the surveys of intentional communities, especially including many statistical surveys, that even though Father Divine's movement, the core members lived in communes, many of these communes lasted for decades, and Father Divine expressed admiration for the Shakers. They're frequently, not always, but frequently excluded from surveys, statistical studies of intentional communities. And I think this would be, it's a big hole in our research. So I'd like to suggest we look at it more.
So again, the issue is if people aren't writing articles about it or writing books about it, it's hard for us to include them. And that goes for any community. If you know of good books that are coming out on that subject, please let us know so we can review them. And if you're interested in writing articles about communities that are underrepresented, please let us know.
Or if you know somebody that you think would write that article, let me know their name and I will reach out absolutely to see if we can help them do whatever that needs to be done to have that happen.
As somebody who was active in helping run the organization, mostly in the 1990s, I see something missing from this presentation. I would like everybody who's had a role in furthering the organization, whether it's on the board or an editor or doing an article, anything that you've done to promote the organization, I wish everybody that's done that would stand up.
Yeah.
I also, I don't know how to convince Lyman Tower Sargent of much of anything, but I thought that we have indexes that that's who does the index of all the authors and all the book reviews and all of the journal articles that there's on our website. I think we should do an index that is communities, so that somebody who's starting to look at anarchists can look at an index of articles, and it'll sort by that, and then we can see, or Omana, and they'll be able to see all the articles that they could go look at in our journal without having to go through the journal. But that would also be good. The people who have furthered the role that they furthered in this association, that's another thing we could put there.
If you want to do it by category, that's fine. If you want to just have everybody stand up at once, I don't care. But I think it's important to acknowledge how many people have helped this organization over the years.
Oh, acknowledge it right now? Yeah, then let's do that.
Yeah. Stand up if you stand up.
Stand up if you are an author, a reviewer, you've been a board member, you've run a panel, you've run a tour. Come on, yeah, you need to stand up for sure.
I'd say stand up if you want to do that eventually, too.
That should be a separate group so you can identify.
So my conclusion is this is not a minority of power-hungry people.
No, we are very willing to share power.
If we are power hungry, we fail miserably.
Oh, here we go. I'm thinking in terms of the academic quality of it really shouldn't be changed. Be an academic journal. But a number of years ago, I was sitting with Steve Washby. I don't know if you remember Steve used to come to, and we were on a pre-conference tour, the back of a bus with our heads together talking about what we're, and things that I was saying, he was going, have you written about any of that? I said, well, yeah, I write about this all the time. He said, really? What, and you should, and I said, but, I'm so far away from scholarship, I'm not going to, I don't write in that form. And so he was a reviewer for law journals. And he said, well, send them to me and I'll help you. And he did a fabulous job. I think, one or two of those things actually did come into the journal. But my point in telling that story is that you might want to solicit a little more that way. But I appreciate, oh my God, the work that the burden that puts. It's one thing if somebody submits something that's already in the form that you're asking for. That's enough work. But then, a farmer like me coming in, that's, you guys have enough classwork and paper collection correction to do. But, something that, and then I wish there was another forum where people could share their thoughts on what they're doing as the year goes along. Something like a Facebook forum. I realize that's risky because it's public and, you have professional people, you don't want to be called out in public forums. But on the other hand, there's a lot of thinking that goes on amongst us all that, foment's out there. It'd be interesting in between conferences to hear more. If there's another level, different from the academic journal.
Can you hold it closer to your mouth? It's really just
Let's go to your
sound of right this way.
So he was saying that we should not take away the academic focus but to add perhaps more of the communitarians. They're not going to want to write an article, but I think more of the reflections section that Rod started and really put in a lot of the issues that he did. He said he knows that's a lot more work, and I immediately thought I can't complain about the work anymore because Rod did it and he did it all by himself. So I can't really say it's too much work to do. Thanks, Rod. Anyway.
Well,
So further to that, to what Doug was saying, there is a Facebook page for communal studies, so that is an option. It is, it is very public, but there is a Facebook page. And Heather does include reflections, so if you are a communitarian and you want to write about your experiences, those aren't peer reviewed, so there is that opportunity to put those in the journal, Doug. And there's also Instagram for communal studies, and we're always looking for people to post stuff there. And if you're an author and you need help, contact us, because we can help pair you up with somebody that can help you through that process.
Okay, I'm a long-term communitarian, but this is my first time here at Communal Studies Association, so this may seem like not knowing, but my question is, has anybody, the staff, the reviewers, or the people who submit articles and get published in it, has any of these people ever been financially compensated for what they're doing, or is it all totally volunteer? I'm seeing a lot of nods. Okay, well then.
We do pay our copy editor. And there were a couple of years I got, I think, $500 honorarium, but that's not been for many years. But no, none of my associate editors and none of our reviewers and none of the authors get paid at all. They are all doing this, and many of them doing a lot of work in their own time for the Communal Studies Association.
Regarding the reflections section of the journal, I take it that you don't get a lot of submissions for that, okay? So maybe it would be a good idea to have an associate editor for that section who actually went out and solicited ideas. Because I'm sitting here and looking at the contemporary communitarians we have in this audience, like Harvey and Albert and Michael and Lyda, and you know, we could ask them, hey, write about what is it like to live in your community? And I would love to read those articles.
I love that idea. Thank you. Also, thank you, Zach.
Zach's taking his exercise. Having laps around the room.
One area to mine, I think, would be Communities Magazine, because they have book reviews, and mostly about contemporary communities and practices, or memoirs. And they also have articles that might be suitable for the reflections, where you could either have the article expanded or even just note that it's in Communities Magazine on this topic. So I think a closer connection to Communities Magazine would really be helpful for getting more contemporary community voices in the organization.
I agree, and I've been working with Chris at Communities Magazine to increase the number of communities-related books that we get in the journal, and also with some of the editorial groups in Britain, because often those are really small presses and we don't hear about them. So that is something we've been working on. That's right.
We're going to get more exercise.
Do you have any thoughts on membership? I'm a little worried about our numbers. I'm a little worried about how we keep records, clearly. But I'm also a little worried about our aging membership and our, I don't know what we can do about that. I mean, and it's something that's happening across academia and across a lot of spaces, but do you have any suggestions? People who are here and who are brought here, like what's working and what should we expand? And that's not for the editor of the journal to do, but there are several board members in this room that can listen to your suggestions.
I'm not sure what the financial situation is like for the association right now, but if there was enough money, I think it would be great to offer some scholarships for younger scholars to come to our meetings. And I think that would be a great way to beef up membership if you could do that. Any sort of financial incentive that you can give to get people here
The
would be a
board
good idea.
discussed that at the board meeting, and are planning to do that.
Just one question. How many of you that in the audience are current members? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're current members. If you're not, we encourage you to become members. You've now seen what a wonderful organization this is, so thanks.
I just first of all, thank you to anybody who's served on this board of directors or has served in a volunteer capacity, which is all of you and anyone here. It's been remarkable to come to these conferences and something my mother and I have treasured. I just wanted to say a couple of years ago, pre-COVID, I brought my daughter and my daughter-in-law, and they both really enjoyed it. And they are not in this particular field. One's an engineer, and one is actually a PhD in German American Studies. But I wanted to say, maybe if we introduced a guest program where you could bring a guest student or someone you think who just flat out be interested, where they get free conference attendance, and then they have to pay for their meals and lodging, but at least give them a free registration, that you could give to the person who attends.
We do have scholarships that we offer. In fact, you'll find out tonight who the winners are. And it's free registration and a small stipend. It doesn't, of course, pay for every single thing, but we do have student scholarships. And as was just said, we're working on getting current communitarian scholarships as well. But
either one of, like my kids they're finished, they've got their PhDs. Yes. So they're no longer students, they're in other fields. So maybe just a gift registration.
Just guess, whether students, not communitarian, not just guess.
Right.
If somebody could then say, I want to bring
a friend, bring a guest, and another discipline, or any discipline.
And we've also talked about giving discounts to people that are referred by a current member.
Right. That's cool. That's a good idea.
The Communal Studies program at USI, there haven't been any students here, right, from that program?
There were some, I did see some.
I think we did see a few, didn't we, Greg?
We have, that's how I got started in this organization in the beginning, was coming as a USI student. We haven't taught the course for a couple of years. We're intending to have the course offered again this spring, but I have voiced my opinion to more than one person that I wish we'd been offering it this fall. And we automatically took for other local groups of students. I did publicize it to everyone who took the undergraduate or the graduate course a couple of years ago, and I emailed all of them.
So I just wanted to give my perspective a little bit as a new scholar, a little bit. So there are less people getting PhDs now. There was an imbalance in the number of people getting PhDs versus the number of academic jobs that were available. That has sort of flipped the other way now. For those of us who are in grad school, the stipends haven't risen to keep up with inflation, and our older advisors are telling us that we really shouldn't be getting extra jobs and we shouldn't be doing other things to fill financial gaps, but we have to because we don't have any choice. That's the only way. Right now I'm sitting here stressed out because I'm getting a bunch of emails from my other internship at school, so and I have to tell them I'm not going to answer until next week. So, also, cost and travel and all that kind of thing are issues as well. So there's that. Also, I think the academic field, what's popular, until I think very recently has been a gender, race, and class lens. And I think it's starting to change now that people are more interested in economics and alternative economic arrangements and religion and belief systems and things like that. So I do think there is hope coming soon that more people are getting interested in this kind of stuff.
Tom had a question up here.
No, actually, I was going to say something very similar to that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, in that case, I'm going to give it to Darcy, and then Doug, I see you again, but I'm going to give it to someone who hasn't had a question yet.
Hi, also as a PhD student, thank you all so much. This is wonderful. I think that's a really good point of what you mentioned, but I also think that I wouldn't put those as separate. Gender, race, and class lenses on religion and economics and community is incredibly important, and they're not two different things. And if I'm hearing correctly, what this association wants to do is actually bring in more voices to talk about gender, race, and class and how they intersect. And so I just wanted to mention that.
As far as membership part of the equation, a captive audience out there would be workers at historic sites. Oh, yeah, oh, yeah. I'm just thinking in terms of a captive audience that's out there that really is get historic sites and their workers, the interpreters that are there, gather them into this and into some portion of membership.
Well, first of all, having been one of those folks, they don't have any money, and also it's very difficult. We have some great examples here of people who have seen the light, but there are other people at historic sites that don't quite get what we can give to them, and that's probably what we need to do, is convince them how important. We're going to have somebody from a historic site speak now. Go ahead.
I think there is a big gap between sort of the academic world and the current historic sites world, which is really unfortunate, and I don't know how to address that. But I wonder if on the membership aspect of it specifically, there are some institutions like ASLH that have an institutional membership that the site pays for, and then employees can get either very cheap or free membership through that. And that might be a great way to sort of have people dip their toe in the water and get introduced to sites. Like Pleasant Hill would be happy to maybe pay a little bit more in our membership if then all of our staff could then maybe not get a subscription to communal societies, but get access to certain things that would encourage them to then become full members or more engaged.
Which is another reason for us to expand the electronic offerings of our journal. As Christian was mentioning, because then we could make sure that those sites know, hey, here's where you go to look at all of this, and we'd have that able to reach out to them. It would cost them nothing.
I'm from Old Economy Village, and our friends group, who would usually have the membership, is really severely hurting in funds. So they're looking at all different ways to make, cut costs. And so they said, a few years ago, they said, we're going to just drop that membership because we just aren't getting anything out of it. So we just aren't going to be members.
So question then, Sarah, is what would you like to get out of it? What's important to you as an institutional group?
That's a great question. I don't know. Because we don't even get the journal anymore, and we're missing out on that. And I heard that we had a lot of articles in there in the past couple of years. So, okay. So, I'm thinking, okay, how do I get the journals from the previous years? And, I'm thinking about getting a membership just myself, but, I don't get paid for that. It's just, I'm just doing that on my own. So I don't know. Do you know?
I think that this is something that we really need to concentrate. I've written down several notes, but maybe I'll probably pick Christian's brain, something I do very often, to see about what we could do to change the electronic, the journal at least, for that. Yeah.
Salesmanship. The membership needs to get work on this.
Our membership does a lot of work. I'm not gonna, you saw the numbers, and you saw the number of reviewers and the number of authors and the number, I am not going to criticize our membership for their workload, especially with Rod sitting in that row, looking at me.
I can probably speak real loudly here, but what's being done to attract, college students? Is there anything, is there any kind of outreach that's being done to attract younger
So there are scholarships available for
Right.
starting scholars. There's research fellowships available to people that are starting out and looking to do the research. And a lot of professors here in the membership that have students that are interested, because they know better than we do at their individual institution who to reach out to.
Well, I guess the question is what are we doing in order to try to let these folks know that we actually exist? I mean, I didn't know you guys even existed until, a year ago. And that's no fault of yours, of course, because I wasn't involved in anything.
It kind of is our fault.
Yeah, sorry.
It kind of is our fault. That's the point of the
Oh,
conversation.
well, so going forward, how do we track? I mean, how do we reach out to let folks know that we even exist, but let alone, right, it's great that we have our scholarships and stuff, but no one's going to take advantage of a scholarship if they don't know the scholarship's even there.
So to turn that question back on you, Tom,
Yeah.
what would have helped you find us?
Well, given that I live right next to the corrections,
Yeah.
If I had some sort of literature that I could pass out to my students and just let them know. I mean, I know you guys have it here, and one of the things I was thinking of is was Greg's question. I mean, I didn't know there was like a course of study in this, right? A minor, right? And I'm thinking, well, I mean, given that we live so close to the community, I wonder if my students would be interested in pursuing a minor. We don't live here, right? So is that available in some sort of an online format where my students can participate, or even myself? I mean, I love taking a course from you, Greg. What is the outreach that
we do have a gift membership that a professor who has a promising student in communal studies can gift a 1-year $20 membership to CSA. It's only 1 year, but it is a student membership, so hopefully they get the newsletter and the journal and hear about the conference and at least get that information. But it just takes all kinds of communication.
Okay, it's all about relationships. Kathy, it's Denise. Here, you're looking for me, Kathy. Here I am. Okay, so we know it's all about relationships, and the great period. I got my PhD 30 years ago, and before I earned that, as a young scholar who knew nothing about this but fell into that whole Ephrata Snow Hill thing, I am one of the ones that the great Don Dernbaugh proselytized to and brought me in and made me feel like I was the future and I was his peer, and I had no idea what I was doing, but he said, here's my wife, she makes cookies, talk to her, and that's when we had growth, because Don Dernbaugh was the Pied Piper, along with others, but he just made us feel so special when we now look back and say, oh my goodness, I didn't know I was in the presence of greatness. And we all need to do that. We need to reach out and bring those scholars, because they are our colleagues in the making, and they have so much that we can learn from. But that's what we need to do. We need to all be Don Dernbaugh.
Well, I was going to say, I wonder if there could be someone who might be interested in, as a member, to actually, that would be their position, would be outreach.
I wanted to make a comment on that, Tom, because this, when did we do it? So we placed an ad about the conference in Communities magazine, targeting that audience, hoping to attract more people from the intentional communities movement. And we need to do that with other outlets, put ads out there, and it's something we're starting to do.
And I would also encourage those of you that are professors, that are teaching students in anything related to communal studies, or even if you teach, a U.S. survey course, and you have a student that's expressed an interest in a community for a research paper, for example, reach out to them, tell them about it, because you're more in contact with your students than we as a board can be.
I think we're 10 o'clock. I'm not related to this field. I'm just related to my husband, who is.
But anyway, my question is, how many universities offer courses in communal studies? And can you reach out to those universities? And is there anyone here who could teach an online course? Because people are always looking for these online courses as a way to bring people who are just curious like me into it.
We are at 10 o'clock.
I got two more people on the stack. Do you want to keep going? Okay.
Just to respond to that while you're moving around, Zach, there are far fewer communal studies courses being taught than we see, and it's really hard to get those approved, particularly in the current political academic climate. But certainly, if anybody's interested in teaching courses, we're getting ready to put syllabi on the website. So we can help you find resources if you're interested in teaching.
You know, that's something we have enough experienced professors and students who have, or as teachers who have taught this, that we could easily, well, not easily, we could create an online, not course maybe, not for credit, not something that but we could create a set of PowerPoints for 5 lessons or 6 lessons that we could provide. And it's not somebody having to teach it, but we could put something like that together and then have that available to whoever wants.
And we are soliciting, if you have syllabi that you might be willing to share, we are trying to put them together so that we can put those on the website.
Good idea. And if you're already teaching a more general course and want to incorporate aspects of communal studies into it, please reach out to us and we can help you with putting that together.
And I wanted to say, don't just focus on PhD students. What about master's students who are doing theses? And I think it's a mistake to think that they'd only be interested if you have a communal studies course. One of the things I think that's very, very important is that when we have a conference, we don't just send out to members, but to all the universities in the area, because we offer day passes and day registration. And also, if we send out the call for papers to all the local universities, we sometimes get even undergraduate students who maybe are interested in a novel that has something to do with the Amish or another intentional community. So I don't think we have to be that narrowly focused. The thing is to get the word out. And you know, you might not get very many from that, but that's pretty much what's worked in the past.
Yeah.
I have a comment.
I was thinking here at the Athenaeum where I work, and all the awesome people who come here to just experience the historical significance we have. And a flyer, we have these flyers downstairs. We have brochures. And I just think of how many people I could grab that brochure and hand to them and they would be going, wow, because that's what I think about them, is wow. So at the sites, you know, the people who come there have been drawn already, and then by having a brochure.
Thank you all.
Thank you.